go into these constellations and use them as ways to get through various paths to do various magical things. Then we get to the next thing. There's these various other high-level celestial beings. Thrones. Some people think thrones are the same as cherubim. Principalities, powers, world rulers. The Greek word that's used in Ephesians 6:12 is archons. And these are all very high-level beings. I personally believe they, and I think this is a fairly common teaching among people who are into this sort of thing, that these are beings that are over cities and that are over nation states. That America has a archon, a principality or a power over itself, as do all nations. Also, I believe that major religions have principalities over them. You know, Mormonism, Buddhism, whatever. That they all have angels, either good or bad, over them. And obviously, if they're a false religion, then it's got to be a bad angel or a bad archon or whatever you want to call it. Just like the nation of Israel has Michael. He's the great prince of the people of Israel. And he is their defender. Of course, what does Michael mean in Hebrew? Who is like God. Because that was the battle cry. See, when Satan rebelled, when Lucifer rebelled in heaven, and he says, I will take my throne. I will be like the Most High. El Elyon in the Hebrew. I will ascend. Well, what happened? It says that the dragon and his angels fought, and Michael and his angels fought, and the dragon was cast out of heaven. And so it was like Michael's very name was saying, who could be compared to our God, our El, our Elohim, Michael, who dares to say they are like Yahweh. That's basically what his name means. And it should be our battle cry as well. An interesting side note about the Archangel Michael. He's regarded in Anglican and Catholic circles as the patron saint of exorcists and of people who deal with the devil and who fight the devil. And there's a prayer which I had to learn as a little child. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Notice here we're praying to an angel. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be thou our defense against the snares of the devil. You know, may thou rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, thrust him into hell with Satan and all the other evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Now, I said that to say this. If you go over to England, there's a very interesting church that's dedicated to St. Michael. And it's in Glastonbury. Have you ever heard of Glastonbury? It's this little town in western England where it's alleged that the Holy Grail was, where Arthur was buried, and it's also alleged that Joseph of Arimathea came there with 12 disciples of Yeshua and set up the first above-ground Christian church in history, a little wattle church. And it's alleged that he put his stake in the ground and that it blossomed. And to this day, that's called the Glastonbury Thorn Rose. Anyway, there's this place called Glastonbury Tor. Now, a tor is an old Gaelic word. It means like a hillside, and it looks artificial. It's this very high hill. It goes up like this, and it slopes down. And it was a place of pagan worship. So you know what they did? A few centuries later, when the Roman Church came in, they decided to build a St. Michael church on top of this tor, which was the holiest place in all England, according to the pagans. And anyhow, they built it and they dedicated it to St. Michael. And on the first Michaelmas, which is the feast of St. Michael, that's what they call it over in England, after that church was built, the tor experienced an earthquake, and it flattened the entire church except for one part, a tower. And that tower still stands to this day. Now think about that when you realize what a tower symbolizes. It's a symbol of the phallic God. So it's sort of like, you know, even though the Catholics were trying to invoke St. Michael and all these other angels. See, you don't need to mess with angels. Go to the top. Deal with the Almighty. Don't deal with middle-level management when you can reach the CEO. Amen? But anyway, when we went over there, it was really interesting because we drove around and we could see this. This naked hill with this one single tower on it dedicated to Michael. So anyway, this is the Celestial Council. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, it's important to understand this in the light of all this stuff about UFOs and the B'nai Elohim. There's the riddle of Psalm 82. I know a lot of Christians have wrestled with that psalm over the years. For example, it says in Psalm 82, this is verse 1, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. Now look at this. I mean, it says right in the Ten Commandments, I am Yahweh thy Elohim, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And yet here we're talking about gods. And then in the 6th verse it says, and this is the verse Yeshua quotes in the New Testament, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. So obviously whoever these gods are, they aren't on the best side of the Almighty. And if you read the whole psalm in context, this is talking about very high-level world rulers, celestial beings of a spiritual nature. These are divine beings, but they're not Yahweh. They are beings, celestial beings, that are partakers of the divine nature, just like we are. How many of you realize we are partakers of the divine nature? Peter tells us that right in his epistle. So we have this council of gods. And what's interesting is if you look in that first verse, in Hebrew it says, this is how confusing it would be, Elohim judgeth among the Elohim. Because there's no capital letters in Hebrew. Amen? So we put that in there in English, just to distinguish that this is the Elohim. And of course you all understand Elohim is plural, right? It's a masculine noun with a plural ending. So right there's the idea of God being echad, being one, but yet also being three. And that's right in the Torah. I want to introduce you to Michael Heiser. He has done some groundbreaking work, which got him kicked out of one seminary. So you know he's on the right track, amen? In terms of proving that there is indeed a divine council in heaven. He's an Aramaic scholar, expert in Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek, and he also really has a love of the truth. And he has done some very excellent, he has a website. I refer you to him. I recommend him very highly. I got to meet him personally for the first time at this Roswell conference I was at in July. But he has looked into the Hebrew and how it's used. He's looked into the ancillary literature of the time that surrounds it. And if you read his stuff, and some of it might be a little bit overly academic, but I can tell you, he knows wherever he speaks. And what's important about his work is that you need to understand that there are these divine beings out there that were part of the heavenly council that are extremely powerful, and that some of these beings have fallen. Because what that psalm is talking about, if you read the whole Psalm 82, is that they are oppressing the poor. They are not judging rightly among the poor. Yahweh gave these celestial beings authority over certain parts of humanity, and they were abusing their people. They were allowing the poor to be victimized. And so he's saying unto them that, even though thou art gods, you will fall like the princes and die like men. And again, the wages of sin is what? Death. So even these beings can die, although that's very rare. So anyhow, he also has a very interesting fictional book whose name totally went out of my mind at this moment. But I'm sure you can find it if you go online. Anyhow, it's a novel which is a barely fictionalized account of some of his experiences in the world of academia. And he has a very intriguing hypothesis about cattle mutilation.